A warm welcome to another Essential Quinn talk today. Thank you for joining me. Today my subject will be looking at the analysis of excess deaths in England and Wales for the year of 2022. This subject has been getting a lot of traction, mainly on YouTube. The press, the mainstream media, fairly silent on the matter of excess deaths occurring at the moment. But I'm going to look at this and help you analyze the numbers. People like Dr. John Campbell, a very prolific YouTuber covering COVID and medical matters, he has been doing quite a number of videos talking about excess deaths. This one is European excess deaths. This one is excess deaths in young adults in 2022. So there is a lot of traction covering this subject at the minute. Now the problem I find when others, non-analytical type people, look at this, they tend to show a graph which may have come from a reputable statistical website or such like, and it'll probably look like this. This is the data for 2022 in graph form. The green bars here represent the 5-year average. That's the trend data. The red bars are the actual COVID deaths during 2022. So if everything else was running as average, then we might expect to see the actual trend of deaths rolling along the top of this red bar. However, what we see here is if we take all deaths, including COVID deaths, we see this line running well below the bars for the first third of the year, and after that running ahead. So we can get a feel and a view of trends with this, but we can't actually see a lot of numbers. And if you're like me, you like to see the numbers. So this is a report that I have produced on spreadsheet, and rather than it be trend data, it is all about the numbers. Here in this column we have the average figures, the 5-year average figures. Now I use for 5-year average in my reporting the years 2015 to 2019, all pre-pandemic. But you must note that ONS themselves are now using pandemic years as part of their 5-year average, and this in a sense statistically skews the data and doesn't really, in my view, tell the true picture of the trend in deaths pre and post pandemic. This column has actual figures, this column has the change or the variance, and this column is telling you the percentage change. So this report comes from a management type practice. If you're looking at financial numbers in a business, you would have your budget or your forecast or your plan numbers, and set next to them you would have the actual, and then you would go through the reports and see where your differences were and where you needed to focus on. So that's the format of my report, and I'll take you there now. So here we are at my spreadsheet where we have this report. This particular report is for the period of week 52, covering the year 2022. And again, as I've said, we have our 5-year average numbers, our actuals, and our variances. Now the first thing I want to highlight with you is I will change this week number to week 16, and what we see here is that up to week 16, or week ending the 22nd of April, deaths excluding COVID were running actually 19,000 odd lower than 5-year average. And of course, the second line, which is the deaths involving COVID, is marching on and is running at that stage at 15,000 odd. So that is an important factor that I want to share to you in contrast with looking at the graph. We know the graph line is running below our 5-year average, but we're not really able to quantify it, whereas here we can. So going back to week 52 again, let's look at the summary of the overall year. What we see for the total year 2022 is that some 12,625 people died in excess of 5-year average from non-COVID related issues. And the total for COVID in 2022 was 33,140. So that gives us a total for the year in excess of 5-year average of 45,765, or some 8.6% of the 5-year average figure. Now with this figure here, if I go to my next section, which is the death rates by age groups, and here again I have my total deaths 45846. My apology that there's a small variance to the figure above, but this is the way the ONS data tends to come. When it's broken down into subsets, it often doesn't quite add back to the whole, but I assure you the data is in line with the ONS database, and the differences are immaterial. And what we can see here is that of our 45,000 odd excess deaths, 15,000 odd are over 85s, nearly 18,000 are 75 to 84, and so on. And we can very quickly see that the bulk of deaths in any given year are always those 75 and over. We can also see a split of these deaths by both male and female. Again, we have a total deaths of 45.8 thousand, but some 30 odd thousand of those deaths are actually male, with 15,500 roughly female. So again, by having the data at our fingertips to compare against the 5-year average, I feel we can make sense of what's happening with the population and the increases in deaths. Which age groups, which genders are those deaths occurring in? My spreadsheet further analyzes data by region. Again, this data is provided by the Office of National Statistics in their weekly download. And again, we can scroll through here and see the excess deaths by region. Here in London, for example, the figure of excess for 2022 is surprisingly low at just 5.2% compared to the East Midlands of 10.6%. Now, when we're trying to figure out why excess deaths are happening, this type of detail is very important. Both splits by region, by gender, that can help us understand what is really going on. Now, the next part of my spreadsheet I want to draw your attention to is the section which I've programmed to include the totals covering the period 2020 to 2022. And it may surprise you to see that the non-COVID related deaths have actually fallen against the 5-year average for this 3-year period. And we have the total for COVID deaths in the period of 189,803. So the net of those figures gives us a total excess deaths for the 3 periods to 2022 of 175,988. And again, we can see the split of these by age group. Now, if I wanted to focus on the COVID deaths for a moment, lower down in my spreadsheet, I have the figure broken down by age group and also by male and female. So of our 189,000 odd COVID deaths, 103,000 odd are among males and 86,000 among females. So I hope the analysis I've shown you today of 2022 has been of interest and hopefully slightly more informative than just the graphical analysis that we usually get. So in summary, I have prepared the following table. Please stop the video if you want to read each item in detail. Thank you for joining me today to take you through this analysis. I hope to be providing updates as we go through 2023, showing the detail of my reports and analysis to give you better information. Thank you for joining me.